One morning, you open your laptop and Windows just stops. It is not a crash or a virus, but a message and a deadline, an expiration date on a computer that still runs perfectly fine. Microsoft has decided your machine is too old. And if you want to stay protected, keep getting security updates, and keep using the operating system you paid for, you need to buy new hardware. Hardware that, in many cases, costs over $1,000. That's the deal Microsoft is offering millions of people right now. And most of those people have no idea it's coming. While Microsoft is quietly engineering one of the most aggressive forced hardware upgrade cycles in the history of personal computing, Ubuntu 26.04 LTS, a completely free and open source operating system, just dropped its most polished release ever. And it runs beautifully on the machines Microsoft says you need to throw away. Microsoft announced Windows 11 with a lot of fanfare. New interface, new productivity features, a fresh coat of paint, fine. But buried inside the announcement was something that sent shockwaves through the tech community. Windows 11 required a TPM 2.0 chip and an 8th generation Intel processor or newer. Millions of machines that were running Windows 10 perfectly well, machines that were only 4 or 5 years old, suddenly didn't qualify. Microsoft said it was about security. Critics said it was about something else entirely. Now, fast forward to today. Windows 10 reaches end of life on October 14th, 2025. That date is locked in. After that date, Microsoft stops issuing security patches for Windows 10. No more fixes. No more protection. And there are, depending on which analyst you believe, somewhere between 240 million and 400 million PCs currently running Windows 10 that do not meet the hardware requirements for Windows 11. That is not a rounding error. That is not a niche problem. That is potentially the largest coordinated hardware obsolescence event in the history of personal computing. Here is where this gets personal for you. Right now, before you do anything else, go to Microsoft's website and download a free tool called the PC Health Check app. Run it on your machine. It will tell you in about 30 seconds whether your computer qualifies for Windows 11. If it does, great, your path forward is clear. But if it doesn't, you are among the hundreds of millions of people sitting in the situation this video is about. A working computer, a closing deadline, and a company that would very much like you to open your wallet. And here's the part that really deserves your attention. Microsoft did offer a solution. They announced the Extended Security Updates program for Windows 10. For $30 per year, per device, consumers could continue receiving security patches after the October 2025 deadline. $30 per machine, per year, for updates that, on every previous version of Windows, were simply included as part of the deal. This is a subscription fee for safety. And if you don't pay it, your computer isn't just unsupported. It is a sitting target. Unpatched machines attract malware the way standing water attracts mosquitoes, and Microsoft knows this better than anyone. Here is the part nobody talks about in the mainstream coverage. The Extended Security Updates program was not designed for you. It was built for enterprise customers, for corporate IT departments managing thousands of machines. Individual consumers trying to access it run into confusing eligibility requirements, Microsoft 365 subscription bundles, and program terms that seem to shift depending on where you look. The message being sent to everyday users is not subtle. Buy new hardware. That is the intended outcome. That is the business case. And it is working as designed. Now, remember that environmental thread I asked you to hold on to? Here is why it matters and why almost nobody is calculating it correctly. The world already generates over 50 million metric tons of electronic waste every year, a figure the United Nations describes as a crisis. Now, layer on top of that hundreds of millions of additional machines being discarded, not because they failed, not because they slowed down, but because a software policy made them inconvenient. Manufacturing a single new PC produces roughly 300 to 400 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent when you account for the full supply chain, the rare earth mineral extraction, the fabrication, the shipping. Multiply that by even 100 million machines, and you're looking at a carbon footprint in the tens of millions of metric tons generated by a policy decision. A policy decision that benefits one company's upgrade cycle. That is the number nobody is talking about. And it is the number that should be making regulators uncomfortable. Now, here is where the story changes direction. Because while all of this was unfolding, something remarkable happened in the Linux world. Canonical, the company behind Ubuntu, released Ubuntu 26.04 LTS in April 2026. LTS stands for long-term support, which means this version will receive full security updates and bug fixes for 5 years. 5 years, for free. And Ubuntu 26.04 is not the rough around the edges Linux that your IT friend used to evangelize at dinner parties 15 years ago. This release is genuinely, meaningfully different in ways that matter for the people Microsoft just abandoned. The installer was completely rebuilt. It now runs faster, handles disk partitioning more clearly, and guides first-time users through the setup process with language that does not assume prior Linux knowledge. The default GNOME 48 desktop environment is snappier than anything in the previous LTS release, with improved memory usage that makes a real difference on older hardware with 4 or 8 gigabytes of RAM. Out-of-the-box hardware compatibility has expanded significantly, with better driver support for older Intel and AMD integrated graphics chipsets. The hardware Microsoft's TPM requirement locked out. Codec handling for video and audio improved dramatically, meaning most media files just work without the user needing to hunt for additional packages. And Canonical has been explicitly, publicly targeting the Windows 10 refugee market with its messaging. They know what they are doing. The timing of this release, the emphasis on ease of installation, the beginner-friendly documentation push, none of that is accidental. Ubuntu 26.04 is positioned as a lifeboat, and it is a remarkably well-built one. Here is what makes it especially compelling for the machines Microsoft abandoned. Ubuntu 26.04 does not require TPM 2.0. It does not require an 8th-generation Intel processor. A machine that wheezes through Windows 10 boot times will frequently snap to life on Ubuntu in ways that will genuinely surprise you. The operating system is lighter, the memory management is tighter, and it does not come loaded with the telemetry, the Cortana remnants, the start menu advertising, and the Clipchamp promotions Microsoft has been steadily embedding into Windows over the past 4 years. And then something happened in the broader community that nobody predicted at this scale. Linux adoption accelerated. According to StatCounter's global operating system data, Linux desktop share climbed past 4% in 2025 for the first time. A number that sounds modest until you understand that it represents tens of millions of active users who weren't there 2 years ago. Steam's hardware survey showed Linux gaming rising to over 2.5% of the player base by late 2025, driven significantly by the Valve Steam Deck, which normalized the idea that Linux can handle real-world consumer workloads. Canonical reported that Ubuntu 26.04 LTS hit over 1 million downloads in its first 2 weeks after release. Linux Mint, a beginner-friendly distribution built on Ubuntu, posted its highest download month ever in the same period. Community-run Linux install events began appearing in public libraries and community centers across the US and Europe. Something real was shifting. The question is whether that shift has staying power or whether it is just a spike of frustration that fades when people run into Linux's learning curve. Here is the honest answer. Ubuntu 26.04 is the most approachable version of desktop Linux ever built. But approachable is not the same as frictionless. If your workflow depends on Adobe Creative Cloud, Ubuntu is not a drop-in replacement. GIMP is capable, but it is not Photoshop, and Premiere has no direct Linux equivalent. If you rely on specific enterprise or government software built exclusively for Windows, you will run into walls. Gaming has gotten dramatically better with Valve's Proton compatibility layer, but there are still titles and anti-cheat systems that refuse to run on Linux. LibreOffice handles the vast majority of Microsoft Office documents well, but complex spreadsheets with advanced macros or heavily formatted Word files can still cause problems at the edges. That nuance matters. The narrative of Ubuntu as a magical free rescue deserves honest scrutiny alongside the celebration. It is a genuine, serious alternative for a very large number of people. It is not a universal replacement for every Windows user. Anyone who tells you otherwise is selling you something. But here is what is already playing out regardless. Microsoft's heavy-handed approach to the Windows 11 transition has accomplished something that 15 years of Linux evangelism never managed on its own. It created a population of motivated switchers, not people who care about open source philosophy. Practical people who are done paying a company that charges them a security fee for hardware they already own. Motivation at that scale changes behavior in ways that no amount of ideological argument ever does. And the data is now reflecting that. Microsoft noticed in early 2025, the company quietly softened some of its Windows 11 upgrade messaging and expanded compatibility checking tools. But the October 2025 deadline did not move. The TPM 2.0 requirement did not change. The $30 ESU fee stayed. These were cosmetic adjustments around a business model that remains completely intact. Here is why this matters to you right now. The deadline is not hypothetical. October 14th, 2025 is real, and it is close. If you're watching this and your machine doesn't pass the PC health check, you are facing a genuine decision with real security stakes attached to it. And the window to make that decision calmly without pressure is shrinking. So here's what to do. Step 1, back up everything before you touch anything else. External hard drive, cloud storage, both if you can manage it. Documents, photos, downloads folder, browser bookmarks exported to a file. Do this today, regardless of which direction you decide to go. It costs you nothing and protects everything. Step 2, run the PC Health Check app from Microsoft's website. Free 30 seconds. Definitive answer on whether your machine qualifies for Windows 11. If it does, upgrade before October. That path is clear and you should take it. Step 3, if your machine does not qualify, download Ubuntu 26.04 LTS directly from ubuntu.com. Do not use a third-party mirror. Then download a free tool called Balena Etcher and use it to write the Ubuntu ISO file onto a USB drive with at least 8 gigabytes of storage. Step 4, boot from that USB drive and run what is called a live session. This is the most important step. You can run Ubuntu completely without touching your existing Windows installation. Everything operates directly from the USB stick. Test your Wi-Fi, test your display, open the browser, get a feel for it. You are not committing to anything. You are test driving. Step 5. If you like what you see, run the Ubuntu installer from inside that live session. Choose the dual boot option, which lets you keep Windows and Ubuntu side by side and pick your operating system each time you start up. This gives you a safety net. Live with both for a few weeks. Make the final call when you're ready, not when you're under pressure. If you hit problems along the way, the Ask Ubuntu website and the Ubuntu community forums are among the best organized technical support communities on the internet. Whatever you run into, someone has encountered it and written up the solution. You are not doing this alone. Here is the bigger picture. What is happening right now is not just a dispute between two operating systems. It is a question about who gets to decide when your hardware becomes obsolete. It is about whether a software company can draw an arbitrary technical line, call it a security policy, and use it to engineer a mandatory upgrade cycle affecting hundreds of millions of working machines. And it is about the real-world cost of that decision. Not just the money in your pocket, but the carbon embedded in the manufacturing of every replacement machine that gets purchased as a result. That cost is real. It is enormous. And it belongs on Microsoft's ledger. Ubuntu 26.04 is not a perfect solution for every person, but it is a real one. A free one. A well-built one that will receive 5 years of security updates starting right now. And the fact that it exists, and that it is genuinely good, is a reminder that the technology ecosystem is larger than any one company's product roadmap. You have options. You have time, but not unlimited time. And the worst thing you can do at this moment is nothing. If you find this video helpful, subscribe for more stories like this. See you in the next one.